So it's rare for me to ever craft multiple versions of the same weapon, very rare. The only ones I can think of would be Round Robin, where I have one with Keep Away, Kill Clip, and one with Keep Away Ellie Cap. I have two Wastelanders, one with Perpetual Motion and Opening Shot for PvP, and one with Lead from Gold and 1-2 Punch for PvE. I have two Sweet Sorrows, one for PvE and one for PvP, and maybe one or two more other crafted weapons with duplicates, but that's pretty much it. But I have crafted four separate Swordbreakers, 3 for PvP and 1 for PvE, because Swordbreaker is the best lightweight shotgun in the game. I mean, just look at this perk pool. It's on the screen now. Just take a second and look at it. That is a crazy perk pool for a shotgun. That's like a rose level perk pool on this thing. There's a ton of great rolls here for PvP and for PvE. Also, happy Halloween, Guardians. I figured as we move into spooky season, it would be fitting to start talking about the Crota's End weapons. I think they're going to be a large focus for this month. And while I wouldn't call any of these weapons meta, they're still very strong and very much worth your time. I've heard some people say these weapons suck. Believe me, they absolutely do not suck. These are fantastic weapons. But coming back to Swordbreaker, it is a lightweight strand shotgun, and it's probably my new favorite shotgun in the game. We're going to talk about PvP first and then move into PvE. So, for PvP, this is without question the best lightweight shotgun in the game, and it's not even close. For PvE, there's a bit more competition, but for PvP, if you want a lightweight shotgun, this should be your go-to choice. Now, starting with barrels, I would go for Barrel Shroud for the handling, unless you're on a class that can boost the handling in some way, in which case I would probably look at Corkscrew Rifling or Small Bore. I would probably avoid Rifled Barrel since we don't have Quick Draw here, and with the already weird pellet spreads of lightweight shotguns, I would also avoid Smoothbore. For barrel perks, Accurized Rounds or Assault Mag. For masterwork, of course, range. Now, in the third and fourth columns, like I said, I have 3 crafted for PvP, and we'll talk about those rolls in a sec, but look at your options here because they're just crazy. Starting in the third column, Elemental Capacitor, Fragile Focus, Threat Detector, and Slide Shot. Fourth column, Golden Tricorn, Sword Logic, 1-2 Punch, Opening Shot, and Barrel Constrictor. Now, folks who still use lightweight shotguns know they fill more of a niche role. Shotguns in general aren't particularly consistent right now. Even precision frames and aggressive frames can whiff what feels like should have absolutely been a one-shot kill. But this is a particularly large issue with lightweight shotguns due to lower range, less damage, and a weird pellet spread. The role that lightweight shotguns generally fill is more for cleanups or as a defensive tool you can swap to quickly in an emergency. So, keeping that in mind, my go-to perk in the third column for most people would be Threat Detector for the boost to handling whenever an enemy is near you. But if you main an Arc class, then Elemental Capacitor is your best choice here without question. Ellie Cap will give you a massive boost to your handling on Arc. Now, if you're using a class or subclass that can fix your weapon handling, such as an Ophidian's Warlock, Strand Hunter, so on and so forth, then I would go for Slide Shot for the range when sliding, or potentially Fragile Focus for the extra range. Of the two, I generally prefer Slide Shot, just because Fragile Focus is still a little too inconsistent for my liking. Now, the fourth column here is where things get a little bit more interesting. Opening Shot is of course the go-to pick here, more range and aim assist on your first shot. Whenever any shotgun has this perk, 9 times out of 10 it's what people will pick because it helps massively with consistency. We do also have Golden Tricorn and Sword Logic as well. They're both fantastic damage perks. Sword Logic will just give you a flat 20% buff after a kill with the weapon, and with Tricorn, a weapon kill will give you a 15% bonus for 7 seconds. If during that time you manage to get a charged ability kill, then that damage goes all the way up to 50%. Of course, this will help tremendously with the shotgun's consistency. They're great choices if you're taking a very aggressive role with the shotgun and aping people, but if that's how you're using a shotgun, I would probably say you're better off with a precision frame or an aggressive frame. Then, lastly, we have Barrel Constrictor, and I'm not sure how to feel about this perk just yet. Basically, when you get a kill with the shotgun, Barrel Constrictor will reduce the pellet spread by 20% for 8 seconds. Now, the benefit from this on a lightweight shotgun is pretty self-explanatory. Lightweight shotguns have a weird pellet spread. Tightening that spread up will help with weapon consistency. I can't give a firm opinion on this perk just yet. I'm still playing around with it, but I do think there's potential here. All that being said though, for the role that lightweight shotguns fill in PvP, I would stick with opening shot. Now, for the roles I've crafted that I mentioned, my general purpose role, meaning a role that I can use on any class or subclass comfortably, is Barrel Shroud, Accurized Rounds, Threat Detector, and Opening Shot. The second role is Rifled Barrel, Accurized Rounds, Elemental Capacitor, and Opening Shot. Rifled Barrel is not normally a barrel I want on shotguns just because it hurts your handling, but LE-Cap nullifies this completely. Even with Rifled Barrel, when I'm using Elemental Capacitor, I still have 100 handling. This shotgun I made specifically for ARC subclasses, and unsurprisingly, this one will pretty well live on my Titan. Lastly, the role that I'm keeping on my Warlock for when I use Ophidians, Barrel Shroud, Accurized Rounds, Slide Shot, and Opening Shot. Since I have Ophidians, I'm not as worried about having a perk in the third column that helps with my handling, so I opted instead for Slide Shot for more range. Also, for the record, Assault Mag would be fine on any of these as well. Just due to how I use shotguns, I want to squeeze as much range as I possibly can out of it. Now, the last thing I'll also just touch on briefly for both PvP and PvE is the origin trait, Curse Thrall, where if you get a melee final blow, your next kill with this weapon will cause the target to explode. This trait has fairly limited use in PvP, but if you run around a corner and have a group of enemies, shotgun melee one, and then manage to get the one-shot kill with a shotgun on another, it may just save your life, so I'm not going to say this is a useless perk either. But the utility here for PvE is pretty self-explanatory. It's really nice, especially in content where maybe you're getting swarmed a lot by lots of melee enemies. You can melee one, then blast another with a shotgun, and the explosion will clear out pretty much anything that's even remotely close to you. Now, moving on to PvE. Once again, there's a ton of great choices here. In the third column, Pugilist, Subsistence, Demolitionist. Fourth column, Surrounded, 1-2 Punch, and of course, any of the damage perks will work well here also. Now, of course, there's a lot of potential combos here. Damage perks would work well with the origin trait. You proc a damage perk, get a melee kill, then use the damage perk on the shotgun to help guarantee that the next kill procs that explosion, which would be fantastic for ad clear. But really, I would say this shotgun's calling in PvE is with melee builds, particularly Strand Titan, given that this is of course a Strand shotgun. Combine this with a War Banner Strand Titan and this thing does work. Throw Pugilist and 1-2 Punch on Swordbreaker and combine that with Strand Titan, War Banner, and Synthos and you're cooking. Pugilist will give you melee energy back on shotgun kills, and smacking a target with Swordbreaker and hitting all your pellets will buff your melee damage. This is perfect synergy with a War Banner Titan melee build. For that matter, this would pair perfectly with something like an Assassin's Cowl build or something similar, but Strand Titan is really where this shotgun shines. Of course, there are other options here. Demolitionist, for example, means this would be a great option for grenade builds by default. Subsistence paired with any of the damage perks would be great for ad clear. In particular, Golden Tricorn, given that Golden Tricorn is much easier to proc the 2 stacks on in PvE. But even with those options, I would still pair this with a War Banner Synthos Titan and 1-2 Punch on the weapon. There are plenty of videos out there for how to build a Synthos War Banner Titan, so I would for sure recommend looking one up and pairing it with Swordbreaker. Now, in PvE, this shotgun does still have some competition within its archetype. I would say the closest one would be the Wastelander M5. Wastelander also has 1-2 Punch and Pugilist, but the biggest advantage I would say it has over Swordbreaker is that it has Lead from Gold in that third column. And it still has 1-2 Punch in the fourth column. Lead from Gold is a very nice perk to have here. These days in PvE, I often find myself out of Special more often than Heavy, and if someone on your fire team is using Cenotaph, you will never run out of Heavy or Special. I think this can make Wastelander ultimately more valuable valuable in PvE, but if you're on a strand subclass, then there is still a substantial benefit to using Swordbreaker just due to subclass synergy. You'll just have to pick which one you value more. For me, I'm currently leaning more towards Wastelander just because I like the synergy. Also, another thing that is worth noting here is that being a lightweight weapon, there is a ton of value here for hunter mains, mainly in PvP, but for PvE as well. Mobility is important on hunters due to it being linked to their class ability, but the stat as a whole just doesn't add as much value as the others. Lightweight weapons give a passive plus 20 to your mobility whenever you have the weapon out, so you could drop your mobility down to 80, and as long as you have the shotgun out most of the time, you won't notice a difference at all. Even in PvP, you can keep the shotgun out while moving around the map and just switch to your primary before you enter into a gunfight. This is the main reason I've barely taken this shotgun off my hunter since I got it. I can drop the mobility by 20 and put those stats into something more useful as a whole, such as resilience for survivability and flinch resistance, or discipline for grenade cooldowns, and still have 100 mobility most of the time just by keeping Swordbreaker out. So if you're a hunter main like myself, lightweight shotguns are still well worth using. But Guardians, this is a great weapon, and the revamped Crota raid is a ton of fun. Yes, the weapons aren't meta, but Destiny is a looter shooter, guys. One of the best ways to avoid burnout is to not marry yourself too much to the meta. I know this is an absolutely mind-blowing concept to a lot of people, but you'll have a lot more fun with the game if you just try different shit now and then. That's all for me today, Guardians. A couple quick notes before we end the video. We finally passed 500 subs, and I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to watch my content and subscribe to the channel. Like, seriously, it means a lot to see that people enjoy the content that I put out here in my little corner of YouTube. I would like to do something special for the occasion, but I'm not really sure what. We're approaching the point in the season to where things are getting a little dry, so I'm more than open to suggestions. What I've been thinking of doing is maybe streaming me trying to do a solo flawless dungeon run. I've never done one before because, quite frankly, I've just never had a reason to, but I thought that might make for an entertaining stream. I'm also planning on streaming a ton throughout Festival of the Lost, so come over to my Twitch and follow me there. For now, do me a favor, leave me a comment, hit that like button and the subscribe button with the bell icon. The next big milestone is 1,000 subs, and I really want to double down on videos and hit that as quickly as possible. For now, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, Guardians.